Dumb. Cool.
Weird.
Podcast. All right, so we're wrapping up the Christmas season here.
Oh, God. Yep.
So we just finished watching Ernest Saves Christmas. Yeah, it's a good one.
That's a classic movie.
Yeah. It's just,
Jim Varney.
Jim Varney. For those who don't know about Ernest is quite the phenomenon. It's definitely clean humor, but it's so fucking ridiculous. It's hilarious.
It's great. No swearing, just him being hilarious the whole time. Playing different characters, doing his own thing.
Yep. Well, basically, the movie starts off with Santa Claus on a plane, and they're making a bunch of Santa Claus puns while him and this businessman are talking, and they're walking through the airport.
So, you're not from around here. Oh, I'm from up north. Oh, like me, I'm from Toronto. Yeah, just a little farther up.
Yep. And by the way, the actor that plays Santa Claus is the actor that voices the Sultan in Aladdin, the animated movie.
That is true.
So, pretty fun fact there. But basically, he walks through there, and when the kids notice who he is, it plays a little magical jingle, and then they kind of look at him.
It's all whimsical and everything.
Yeah, whimsical. And then he kind of looks at him and goes, "Shh." Kind of weird pedophilia vibes there, but
I mean, he was chosen to be Santa Claus in like 1889, so there was a much more innocent time back then in Germany.
Yep.
At least he didn't say, well, I remember when I became Santa Claus in 1939. I was in a camp.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't say.
Yeah, it's weird. But basically what ends up happening, though, is, we kind of go into the movie, and Ernest is trying to get this guy to the airport, and, Ernest is being Ernest, and he's like, you know what I mean? And he's, like, driving the car, and the guy's, like, flipping all over the car, and he's like, can you get me to the airport on time and maybe not try to kill me? And then Ernest is like, hey, I can get you there real quick, and I'll get you there in one piece.
I love when the guy falls out of the car because he hits the door while moving around too much, and then Ernest drives out there, grabs him, and he's like, I told you, buddy, safety first.
Yep. And so he puts him back in the car. And when he gets him in the car, it's actually kind of funny. Basically, what ends up happening, though, is a tree falls off the back of a truck. Ernest stops the fucking cab, and the guy's in the back like, "What the hell's going on?" And then
that was with Santa Claus. Huh? When he went to the it was after he dropped off the other guy and Santa Claus showed up.
Oh, so that's when he threw him. Yeah. So when he shows up, when he shows up with the this is why I forget shit sometimes, like the order of operations. But basically, they show up. He shows up to the airport. This guy is like catatonic. The original guy in the cab, throws him out. And when he shows up, by the way, he runs over these Japanese guys like luggage, and he just doesn't give a shit. And
no.
He like literally kicks their shit underneath the fucking. Well, basically, he kicks the shit out of the way. He tries to get the guy's bag out, destroys his bag, and all his shit falls out. Ernest kind of kicks his stuff underneath his car, and then he rolls him into the fucking conveyor belt where the baggage goes, the checked luggage, and he just goes down the baggage claim, and it's just like we never see that guy again. No. He's probably dead.
Oh, and you know what's funny is before Santa Claus gets in the cab, the thing that was really funny was the fact that Santa Claus shows up with a passport with a picture sort of like taped on. And the guy's like, "Oh, is this you?" It's like, "Well, yes, it is." So, is that your real name? Of course it is. What was the guy's name? And he's looking at everybody else. Everyone's dressed up like elves, and the one guy was dressed up like an Arab guy.
Yep.
And I'm like, this is why 9/11 happened.
Yep, pretty much.
Airport security was very lax back then.
Yeah, so basically what ends up happening, though, is when he goes out of the airport after he gets through that like weak-ass fucking security check, he gets in the car with Ernest. Ernest is driving down the street, and that's when we get in the middle of traffic, and he just like stops the car, gets the tree, and he fucking just takes the tree and throws it in the back of the fucking seat with Santa Claus.
He smashes the window.
Smashes the side window out, and then he's just like, "Oh, don't worry about it. Let's go." And then he's like, "Oh, you're really," and he's like, "Oh, you're a really good boy there, Ernest." And he's like, "Yeah, get in the Christmas spirit." You know what I mean? And so
Christmas, my favorite holiday.
Yep. And so they're driving. And when they're driving, like basically they end up going somewhere because apparently the plot is Santa Claus is retiring and he's got to transfer his Santa Claus powers to somebody else.
His curse,
the Santa Claus curse. And so basically they're sitting there and they're chatting it up, and and then when they get there, before they get there though, they pick up this girl who's a fucking criminal.
Yeah.
She literally dines and dashes and steals shit all the fucking time.
Yep.
And this girl's like trying to always pull a fast one on people. She's like, "Oh, my brother's in there, I promise, and he'll pay the bill." And the waiter at the restaurant they're at, he's like, "I don't believe you." And then she's like, "Wait, he's right there." And then he looks away, and then she like runs into the cab. And as they're driving off, basically like she's given her like whole like sob story about what's going on.
I love how Santa Claus figures out her whole story is like bullshit, but just doesn't say anything.
Yeah, he's very like coy about it, I guess.
He's like, "Oh, you don't say."
Yeah. And so they get to where they're going. Santa Claus gets out and he's trying to pay Ernest, and he's like, and Ernest looks at it and goes, "This has like."
It had it was like Monopoly money.
Yeah, it was like Monopoly money. And then Santa Claus goes, "Oh, that's because I gave my real money to this little kid," and he
gave $290 to little Jimmy.
Yeah, little Jimmy. And then Ernest is like, "Well, it's on the house."
Yep.
Saying Merry Christmas.
And then Ernest gets fired.
Yeah, Ernest gets fired later. But basically what ends up happening is Santa Claus shows up to this fucking place, and he's like sitting there trying to, he's trying to like talk to this guy who's going to be his replacement. And this like business guy shows up. He was an agent. He's an agent, and he's he works in the film industry. And he's like basically, Santa Claus was there first trying to talk to him. And then he's like, wait, who are you? I'm trying to talk here.
I am Santa, Mr. Santos. I need you to
back up a little bit. And so they're trying to have a conversation, and it's fucking bizarre. Like, this guy is such a dickhead, and it kind of sets him up as like the villain of the movie. And it's funny because like as soon as that agent rolls up in that car, you already know they're setting him up for the villain of the movie because his license plate. What did his license plate say?
I can't remember now.
Yeah.
But it was funny because he goes to the the postman, and he hands him his keys like, "Yeah, park it up somewhere nice for me."
Yeah, and the postman's like, "What?"
He's like, "Oh, all right, I guess I'll steal your car."
Yep. So then basically what happens is we cut to back to Ernest, and like Nick said, Ernest basically is getting chewed out by his boss, and then he basically gets like fired, right?
Yep.
And then he ends up getting sent a sack. But like then we cut, so it's like cutting back between the two scenes. It cuts back to Santa Claus, and Santa Claus is like, "Oh no, my sack!"
Because it's like, "Oh well, can you prove to me that you're like Santa Claus?" And he's like, "Oh no,
my sack! I forgot my sack."
And then the agent decides, he's like, "Okay, I'm gonna call somebody here because this guy's got to be deranged."
Yeah, so he ends up sending him to jail, basically. And basically, Ernest and the girl figure out that the sack is magic.
Yeah, after vandalizing someone's house, of course.
Yeah, they literally take the tree and they go to Vern's house. So back in the day, there used to be these Ernest sketches that he used to do, and it was always a POV video.
Yep.
of him talking to somebody, and the person he was talking to is supposedly his neighbor Vern, his friend Vern. But Vern is like doesn't really like him. But we thought it was really funny how like he's sitting here destroying this house.
Yep.
And Vern could just easily call the cops or something, but he doesn't. And just Ernest keeps fucking shit up.
I love how he's trying to help. Like he's trying to put the lights in the tree and everything. So he pulls the wiring out of the wall.
Yep. He basically grabs a receptacle, pulls a receptacle out of the wall, and then like the wiring that's connected to the receptacle, he's just ripping it straight out of the drywall.
It's just like, why, Ernest? Why are you doing this to Vern?
Yeah. And so, he ends up leaving the house. And by the way, Vern is apparently expecting people at his house for like a party. And, and Ernest just picks up his punch bowl and just drinks straight out of the punch bowl. Oh,
and then the other girl was stealing the snacks, and then they vandalized the snack table because the tree fell on it.
Yep.
Just, the whole area is turned to shit.
Turned to shit. So then we cut back to Santa Claus is in jail, and he's like singing Christmas songs with these inmates.
These guys could be like rapists, pedophiles.
Yeah.
And Santa Claus is just like, oh, they're all good boys.
Yeah, good boys, right. And so what ends up happening though is they're like, "Oh, we got to return the sack back to Santa." So what they decide to do is they decide to get in disguises. Like Ernest dresses up as a psychologist, and the little girl, well, she's not a little girl, she's like I guess like a teenager, and
She's
it's
like an undisclosed teenager.
yeah,
young
and then
adult.
she's basically like his niece or something.
Mhm.
And they show up there, and he's like, I need to check out your prison."
Just one of those surprise inspections for the governor.
Yep. And then literally he just shows up with her, and they're like inspecting this place, and they find Santa Claus, and he's like, this man thinks he's Santa Claus. Well,
He's clearly deranged. He needs to be in in a nice padded room, getting himself some self-hugging treatment.
yep. And basically, what they end up doing is they basically trick the cops out of like into giving them Santa Claus, and then Santa Claus is like, "Oh, thank you, I appreciate that." And then he's like, oh, he's like, and then Ernest is like, well, what do we do now, Santa? Because now they believe that it's Santa Claus, and because of the sack. And Santa's like, well, I need to go see this guy, so we need to go to this movie studio. And then I was telling Nick when we were watching, I was like, this is like the easiest, like,
Yeah.
basically the easiest location to get because they already had a fucking like studio location for this fucking movie.
Yeah. And what's crazy is that they sneak Santa Claus in, and Ernest plays the Snake Man, like one of those back bayou snake men. This snake, you done bit my boy.
Yeah.
Killed him.
Well, I think before that though, he goes back to where the guy was working at, and he dresses up as the old lady. He's like, "A mother's work is never done." And he's like, he shows up, and he walks up to the lady and goes, "Can you tell me where my son is?"
The good son died, and all I have is this bad one. He doesn't care about his mother.
Yep. And basically, she tells him that he's at the studio. That's when they go to the studio, and that's when Ernest dresses up as the snake handler. He's like,
Derek right here, he killed my boy. Bit him right on the neck. He did.
then the guy's like, all right, you can go in. And they let him into on the fucking stage. And then Santa Claus sneaks in. And like this, so in this movie, they have a movie in the movie. So they're shooting this movie. And it's like this whimsical moment where the dad is like taking care of his two kids. And then all of a sudden, a half-assed creature from the Black Lagoon just like...
Covered in Christmas lights, by the way.
Christmas lights, kicks in the door, and he goes, all right, you son of a... And he looks over at the director and goes, I can't say it.
I can't say it. And then the guy, like, with the guy who's playing the monster from the Black Lagoon takes off his mask, and he's got this expression on his face.
He's so mad.
He's like, I'm the creature from the Black Lagoon.
So unprofessional.
You should be excited. You should feel... humbled to work with me. Yeah,
and he's not humbled to work with him. And so basically what ends up happening though is they're like there's like a bunch of fights going on between the director, the agent, the producer, and they're getting all pissed off, and then like the talent, the guy that's supposed to replace him as Santa Claus, he's like, look, I appreciate you coming here, but we can talk some other time. And he's like, oh, this isn't a Christmas movie. This is an abomination. And so basically while this is going on, we cut back to Ernest. Ernest is standing next to this pickup truck, dressed up as this fucking like crazy ass snake handler bayou guy. And these guys from a different set show up and go, "Hey, are you the snake guys?" Like, he's like sitting there, like, "Oh yes,
I am."
And then they're like, "Well, we're gonna dump the snakes here," and he goes, "Go ahead."
Dump a whole pile of snakes in the bed of his truck.
And so he's sitting there looking at these snakes. He's like, "Oh my god,
they're big.
Yeah,
they're all poisonous and big."
Yeah, and so what ends up happening is, Santa Claus comes back out and he sees that there's snakes in there, and like Ernest like stands up and he's got like snakes like attached to his face because he's.
Oh no! So what happened was he's like, "I don't think you want to sit back there, Santa." Then they go to the bayou to release all the snakes, and then he's covered in fucking snakes, just getting bit all over his face, screaming.
Yeah, it's fucking hilarious. Which, by the way, the entire time of this movie that this is going on, there's these two guys who work at the airport. It's a fat guy and a skinny guy. These guys are in every Ernest movie, pretty much.
They're incompetent.
They're incompetent as hell, and they end up like getting like the reindeer. They're like boxed up in these boxes, which is kind of cruel when you think about it, because there's probably no air in there. But like the whole time, this guy, when he'll look at something, and then his eyes will go, and they'll give like little sound effects when he's like looking
they'll
around.
Roll around in his skull.
Yeah, it's really weird. But basically, it sort of like adds to the plot, but not as much as you might think. I mean, we know the reindeer are there,
yeah,
but they keep going back to these guys, which it's kind of funny because they are kind of ridiculous.
They call it animal control.
Yeah, they call it animal control. Animal control like looks up at the fucking ceiling. They're like, I don't know about this.
You probably call the cops.
Yeah,
they'll shoot them.
Yep, and then eye roll thing again. You know.
Yeah, and then the elves show up at the airport and they pull the same thing where the guy working the desk is just like, I see too many weirdos at this airport. It's a good thing airport security is lax.
Yep. And so what ends up happening, though, is they go back to Ernest's house. The girl stays at the house. She actually ends up switching the sack for the...
And stealing all the presents.
Stealing all the presents, and she switches it with a fake one. And so Santa Claus gets, humiliated again because he tries to show up to the Santa Claus, the new Santa Claus's, workplace, and he tries to show him his sack, and it's
just feathers.
Just feathers. And, he's like, oh, I don't believe you. I gotta go.
Yeah.
And basically what ends up happening though is Ernest gets a wild hair to try to find these fucking reindeer. And so basically what ends up happening is so the girl runs away with the fakes, with the real sack. She's basically trying to leave. She basically gives all her money to this guy, and the teller guy, and she's like, oh, I want to go anywhere. Well, how far will this get me? And he was like, here.
Miami. He's like, I want to go farther south. How much will this get me? And he's like, you can go to Miami.
Yep. And then
she just went for it.
Yeah, she went for it. And basically, like, she's looking at this family, and this older brother's like teasing like his younger sister.
He's a really shitty kid too.
Yeah, he's like, oh, Santa Claus isn't real. Fuck that. And she's over there like, and the girl's like kind of like, oh. And then she has like her little moment,
It's like, wait a minute, Santa Claus is real. I met him, literally.
Yep. So she ends up having this moment where she like basically decides to do the right thing, and then she meets up with Ernest, and they go get the reindeer, and they meet up with the elves, and the elves are like, here we are, we're the elves. And that was that literally was the credentials. Like literally Ernest shows up to see those two guys with the girl, and they're like, we're here to get the reindeer. And they're like, well, we need to see some credentials. And all of a sudden these elves just pop up and they go, well, look at us. We're elves.
And the two guys at the airport are just like, well, this checks out.
Yeah. I'm just like, what the fuck? And so they basically get everything out. And when they have everything out, like all the reindeer and stuff, they strap it up to the sled. And, Ernest is like, he's got the girl, he's got the two, was the girl with him?
No, the girl wasn't with him. She was going to connect up with Santa Claus because Santa Claus just transformed the guy, his replacement, into Santa Claus, and to kind of get things rolling so he would believe. He wished that guy at the beginning's Christmas wish of getting snow.
Which was a really weird plot point, by the way, because I didn't expect that to actually get resolved.
Yeah, no, but the guy was like having a cutthroat business meeting, and then all of a sudden he sees snow outside, and he's like, you know what? Let's reconvene in a few days. Go home and love your family. Happy holidays and Merry Christmas.
Yeah, and by the way, the guy that became Santa Claus, he turned down a fucking deal, and the producer and the director and his agent were like, well, why don't you do this deal? It's good.
But then it was worse.
But then the producer's like, well, you're a nobody.
You're just scum. Treating him like garbage. And everybody, the producer, the director, and the agent are like, Oh God! Like,
Oh God.
this guy's evil.
Yeah, so he ends up turning it down. He goes back because he gets the whimsy, and he's like, "Oh, well, maybe there's something to Santa Claus." He shows up, and then they shake hands, and like Nick says, he gets the curse.
He gets the curse of Santa Claus.
But then we cut back to Ernest and the elves, and they're trying to get the fucking reindeer to go. But Ernest is stupid. He's kind of he's a moron.
He's a moron.
So he doesn't remember the names of the reindeer. So the elves have to help him out, and then they fly off, and then they meet up with Santa, and then Bob's your uncle.
And that's the movie.
Yeah, that really is the movie because basically they meet back up. Santa Claus, the new Santa Claus gets in there, and then the guy who was Santa Claus meets up with the old lady, and the old lady's like, "So, did you have a name?" And he's like, "Oh, it was Apple something."
Yeah, so he had like a really obscure name. He's been going by Santa Claus for so long, you probably forgot.
Yeah, and basically Ernest ends up helping the new Santa Claus deliver the presents. So that's how Ernest saves Christmas, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it worked out.
It worked out.
That's why we have Christmas to this day.
Yeah, because of Ernest. So what is the dumb, cool, and the weird about this?
I mean, the clear dumb was was Ernest.
Well, yeah, he was the dumb.
I mean, that man is surprisingly employed.
But let's talk about the dumbest person. It was Santa Claus.
Yeah, what?
He really didn't think a lot of this through.
No, he just showed up expecting everything to go with like some level of whimsy.
Yeah, he really believed that all he had to do was show up and just tell people he's Santa Claus, and then all of a sudden, like, that guy would want to be the new Santa Claus.
Exactly, like that was pretty dumb.
Yeah.
Weird had to be the fact that Santa Claus has this power to tell who's naughty and nice, but doesn't really do anything with it. He just walks around like with all these people lying and doesn't call them out on their bullshit.
Well, remember, he doesn't always remember. That was like a plot point to try to get around that, because I know for a fact that if he was in a jail cell with all those different people, there's no way in hell he couldn't have been like, "Oh God."
He's like, "Oh God, I hope you all die."
Yeah. I will admit that was really weird.
That's why he needed his replacement, because like, I'm having to write down everything.
Yeah. But honestly, the coolest thing about this fucking movie is I love the fact that Jim Varney can just do all those different characters like on the drop of a hat. It's fucking hilarious. Like that. Honestly, that's what I really like about Jim Varney the most, is just his ability. I mean, he's dead now. He unfortunately
lung cancer.
Died from lung cancer.
Loved cigarettes.
Right after Toy Story 2, that's when he died. That was back in the 2000, 2001, something like that. I think it was 2000.
Yeah.
And it's really sad, but like, yeah, he, Jim Varney was one of those guys. He was good at doing stuff. I watched a video one time where him and Robin Williams were like kind of having a back and forth, and they kind of played off each other pretty well.
Yeah, they know how to feed off each other.
Yeah, but that was Ernest Saves Christmas. It's definitely worth watching. I'm sure me and Nick will get around to watching the other Ernest movies at some point.
I mean, there's so many we can choose from. Ernest goes to jail. Ernest goes to the army.
Ernest goes to Africa.
He goes everywhere.
Ernest Rides Again. There's really a movie called Ernest Rides Again.
No.
And then there's another movie called Ernest Goes to School. Ernest Slam Dunk Ernest. There's what's another one? Ernest Goes to Camp.
Ernest, like literally, if he didn't die, Jim Varney could have just kept making these movies forever.
Yeah. Ernest would have went places, man.
Yeah. With all the places he's already gone, who knows?
I mean, shit, Ernest could have met Cardi B.
Ernest meets Cardi B. That would be
Hey, we could have even got Ernest meets the Flintstones.
Yeah, Ernest meets the Great Kazoo.
Yeah, the possibilities would have been endless.
Ernest meets the Jetsons.
Yeah, Ernest meets Bigfoot.
Yeah. Ernest meets a Skinwalker.
Yeah. Ernest Goes to Planet of the Apes.
Okay, that one would have been great.
I don't know about these apes here, Vern.
Vern, I don't really trust these here apes.
No,
I don't want them to touch me.
Honestly, another really good Ernest movie is Ernest Scared Stupid. That's a good one too. That's actually one of my favorites, believe it or not. But we'll save that next year for Halloween because it's definitely a Halloween episode. But yeah, so watch that around this holiday season. I hope you guys have a good holiday. We'll see you in the new year, and
Merry Christmas, motherfuckers.
And happy holidays, you filthy animals, and a happy fucking New Year too.
Duh. Stay sexy, Georgia.
Yeah.
You filthy animals.
Thanks for checking out the Dumb Cool Weird podcast. We're a movie podcast now, so Movie Monday is every Monday about crappy movies from the 20th century. It's gonna be great, folks. I can't wait to show y'all.